It's time for our annual list of books to read for this Halloween season of 2023. Well, it's already October somehow, and that means it's time for me to give you my annual list of books I'll be reading this Halloween season. Y'all know I read a lot of horror all year long, so we're not just looking at horror novels for this video, but specifically at Halloween books. Around this time of year, instead of reading any old horror novel, I focus on ones specific in some way to the season. There are some exceptions perhaps, and I'll explain the reason for those as we go along, but in general, this is the time at which you can learn about some Halloween-specific books. And I encourage you to get copies of these books for yourselves and read along with me. There will be purchase links to all of these books down in the What's It, so as soon as you finish watching this, you can click those links, get copies for yourselves, and join me as I work my way through all these books. Before we get too far into it, I should also apologize. If you've been looking for my video about what I read in September, my monthly book review video, I've just been so overwhelmed with everything I need to do in preparation for Halloween that I'm afraid I haven't gotten around to it. So what I've decided to do, just in the interest of keeping things moving forward, is I'll be combining that video with the October review video at the end of this month or at the beginning of November. So that means in about a month you'll be able to hear my thoughts and reviews of at least most of these books along with what I read in September. And that's of course assuming I get through all of these, which I intend to do, but you never know how time happens to get away from us. And that's important because in this video, I haven't read these books yet. These are the ones I'm going to be reading this month, all of which is to say, you should be sure to subscribe and ring that notification bell so you don't miss out on the reviews when they do happen. Okay, with all that prefatory material out of the way, let's get started with my literary selections for this Halloween of 2023. First up, coming as assuredly no surprise to many of you, is my book. I've talked about it before, so I won't go chapter by chapter here. I won't belabor the point, but I will say that if you're looking for some spooky non-fiction around this time of year, then you really can't go wrong with Case Files of the Rocky Mountain Paranormal Research Society, Volume 1. It's got ghosts, aliens, demons, you name it. There's even a sort of Halloween-themed chapter in which Rocky Mountain Paranormal participated in a live radio broadcast at a haunted hotel for a Halloween special on a radio program, and ended up recording a rather mysterious, otherworldly sort of a voice inside the otherwise abandoned hotel. So do be sure to check that out. But you're probably here to learn about some other books, so let's get to those now. First of those, we have a book by an author I've mentioned on this channel before. The book is Scary Bastard by Aaron Beauregard. The tagline on the cover says, "This Halloween, the sanitarium doors have opened for spine-tingling Samhain slaughter." And the description on the back says, "Bones crushed, pulled out guts, candy, and homicidal nuts." What do a brilliant child killer, a hopeful special effects artist, a duo of budding teen spree killers, a student screwing teacher, and a mutated maniac missing his lower jaw have in common? They're all out this Halloween. How will their paths cross? Who will be butchered? Can anyone survive this bloodbath, or are they destined to drown in a pool of warm red? This slasher nightmare gives you a seat right beside the killer. But don't get too comfortable. There's a scary bastard on the loose. If you've watched some of my other videos, you may know that Aaron Beauregard is one of the maestros of extreme horror, to the extent that his novel The Slob managed to even get under my skin a bit in one particular scene. And if you know me, you know that's nearly impossible. As much as I love horror, I'm so jaded that they tend to have very little effect on me. So when I find someone who can get under my skin, I get all kinds of excited. Now, as with the rest of these books, other than mine of course, I haven't read this one yet, but if it's anything like some of the author's other work, I think we're in for a wild ride of some of the most extreme horror around, and since it is set on Halloween night, it's a perfect read for this month, as the nights grow longer and colder, and the world seems to get just a little bit spookier and so much more fun. The next one is something rather different. I'm honestly not quite sure what to make of it, but I'm very curious to try it out and see what it's like. The book is called Halloween Core by Jonathan Brooks, and it's part of this Holiday Dungeon Core compilation. These are 5 novellas, each themed around a different holiday, so I figured I'd at least try the Halloween one this month. Perhaps I'll end up reading all 5 at once, but that remains to be seen. Anyway, I'd never heard of this book or author until I happened to meet the author at a convention a few months back, and I picked this one up. My understanding is that these are novellas written with RPG, role-playing game, rules and elements incorporated as part of the plot or narrative. So I guess it's something like reading a D&D campaign. I honestly have no idea how that works, but I did used to play a fair amount of D&D, and I'd like to, again, if I could only find the time and a good game group. So I'm really curious to see what these books are like, if they sort of capture some of the essence of the game. And again, since one of them is Halloween themed, this seems like the right time of year for it. Next up is one I actually haven't gotten my copy of yet. I only just heard about it a couple days before filming this, and I've already placed my order, but I haven't received it yet, so you'll just see the cover pop up on your screen if I'm able to find a photo of it. Anyway, the book is The Last Haunt by Max Booth III. There are several things worth mentioning about this book. First is that I'm a fan of the author. He's another one who's been mentioned on this channel before, and for good reason, so I'm certainly happy to read another one of his works. But perhaps more importantly with regard to this specific book is that it's not about a haunted house in the sense of a house with ghosts. Rather, it's about a haunted house as in the Halloween season attractions, that kind of haunted house. But not just any haunted house, a very specific one. Let's read the description and you'll see what I mean. The description says, "On the 1-year anniversary of a young woman's tragic death, an extreme haunted house attraction reopened its doors to the public. What happened next would forever traumatize a small Texas town. The Last Haunt is an attempt to make sense of the mysterious brutality that occurred on that fateful Halloween night. Constructed from interviews with the survivors, this oral history is the closest anyone has ever come to documenting the truth behind the McKinley Manor massacre." Does that name sound familiar to you? It should. It sounds quite similar to McKamey Manor, an infamous extreme haunted house, originally in California and now in Tennessee, operated by a man named Russell McKamey. And it's infamous because, supposedly, after obtaining signatures on a huge waiver of liability, this haunted house subjects people to actual torture. But here's the thing. I know how the law works, and I know very well they can't be doing as much as they claim to be doing. And there have been all kinds of controversies around it. People claiming it's not what it seems to be, people saying it is what it seems to be, all kinds of things. To the point that I've even thought about trying to scam my way into the haunt with hidden cameras just to see what it's really all about. But I haven't done that yet, so I remain curious about the subject, and I'd certainly be happy to read a horror novel inspired by something like that. But The Last Haunt, from what I gather, isn't just inspired by the haunt. I asked the author about it, and he told me he did a lot of serious research, to the extent that he's convinced the way he portrays the fictional haunt in his novel is actually fairly accurate to what's really going on at the real-life McCamey Manor. So, of course I have to read this one. And since haunted houses are a perennial Halloween tradition, this seems like just the time to do it. Plus, the book just came out, so it's fresh and new for all of us. The next couple of books aren't necessarily Halloween books, but they're part of what's become a Halloween tradition for me. There's another YouTuber whose channel is called Chapter Stacks, and she has a book club, of which I'm a member. I'll link you to the information down in the What's It in case you want to check it out for yourself. It started a few years back as a monthly book club, but at this point now we just choose a couple of books to read together around Halloween, and we discuss them. And the next two books are our book club selections for this year. First of these is a book called Mary, An Awakening of Terror by Nat Cassidy. Honestly, I know very little about it. I've never read this author before, and only even heard of the book because of the book club. But let's start by reading the description. It says, Nat Cassidy's debut horror novel, Mary, An Awakening of Terror, blends Midsummer with elements of American Psycho and a pinch of I'll Be Gone in the Dark. Mary is a quiet, middle-aged woman doing her best to blend into the background. Unremarkable, invisible, unknown even to herself. But lately things have been changing inside Mary. Along with the hot flashes and body aches, she can't look in a mirror without passing out. And the voices in her head have been urging her to do unspeakable things. Fired from her job in New York, she moves back to her hometown hoping to reconnect with her past and inner self. Instead, visions of terrifying, mutilated specters overwhelm her with increasing regularity, and she begins auto-writing strange thoughts and phrases. Mary discovers that these experiences are echoes of an infamous serial killer. Then the killings begin again. Mary's definitely going to find herself. That certainly sounds like the kind of story I'd like to read, and there's a ton of praise on the back of the book from authors for whom I have a lot of respect, so it sounds at least quite promising. And then the next one is A House with Good Bones by T. Kingfisher. This is an author I've read before, although I don't know this particular book. But I did like the other Kingfisher book I've read, so I was happy to see her name come up again in this book club selection. The description of this one says, Mom seems off. Her brother's words echo in Sam Montgomery's ear as she turns onto the quiet North Carolina street where their mother lives alone. She brushes the thought away as she climbs the front steps. Sam's excited for this rare extended visit and looking forward to nights with just the two of them, drinking boxed wine, watching murder mystery shows, and guessing who the killer is long before the characters figure it out. But stepping inside, she quickly realizes home isn't what it used to be. Gone is the warm, cluttered charm her mom is known for. Now the walls are painted a sterile white. Her mom jumps at the smallest noises and looks over her shoulder even when she's the only person in the room. And when Sam steps out back to clear her head, she finds a jar of teeth hidden beneath the magazine-worthy rose bushes, and vultures are circling the garden from above. To find out what's got her mom so frightened in her own home, Sam will go digging for the truth. But some secrets are better left buried. So one thing I will just point out, I also have a little jar of teeth in my cabinet of curiosities, but I suppose that's neither here nor there. The other book I read by this author was called The Hollow Places, and it's just a lot of fun. This one sounds perhaps a bit more serious, but honestly it still sounds like another winner. Neither of these is particularly Halloween-y, but that's okay because the book club itself makes the Halloween tradition. The next one I've chosen is Harvest Home by Thomas Tryon. It's a pretty well-known book, but I've never read it, so I figured now would be a good time to rectify that. Let's go ahead and start with the description of this one as well, which says, after watching his asthmatic daughter suffer in the foul city air, Theodore Constantine decides to get back to the land. When he and his wife search New England for the perfect 19th century home, they find no township more charming, no countryside more idyllic than the farming village of Cornwall Combe. Here they begin a new life. Simple, pure, close to nature, and ultimately more terrifying than Manhattan's darkest alley. When the Constantines win the friendship of the town matriarch, the mysterious Widow Fortune, they're invited to join the ancient festival of Harvest Home, a ceremony whose quaintness disguises dark intentions. In this bucolic hamlet, where bootleggers work by moonlight and all the villagers seem to share the same last name, the past is more present than outsiders can fathom, and something far more sinister than the annual harvest is about to rise out of the earth. So, there's no mention of Halloween specifically here, in the description at least, but it does seem to center around the harvest season, and as we all know, the harvest occurs in the fall, right around Halloween time. So even if it's not specifically about the holiday, it still seems like a good choice to deliver some autumnal creepiness for the season. Next up, although I can't remember for sure, is one I have a sneaking feeling I might have featured in last year's video, because it's been on my bookcase for a while. But even if it was in last year's video, I'm ashamed to say I didn't end up getting around to reading it last year, so I'm putting it on my list for this year. It's a book called What October Brings, a Lovecraftian celebration of Halloween. It's an anthology, and it's edited by Douglas Draw. That's an editor whose work I don't know, but when I look at the table of contents in this book, there are a lot of authors whose names I do recognize. And regardless of whether I know the authors or not, the idea of blending Halloween with Lovecraft just seems perfect to me, and I can't wait to see what these stories have in store for me. The description on the back of this one says, What October Brings, a Lovecraftian celebration of Halloween. Halloween. A time for laughing children in white bedsheets and superhero costumes. A time for chocolate candy and pumpkins and trick-or-treat. A time for dark things everywhere to slink out of the shadows and into our lives, reminding those unlucky few that our charades of Halloween cannot erase the centuries of history and pain behind the facade. What October Brings celebrates the dark traditions of the autumn rituals, of Halloween and Samhain, in homage to the uniquely fascinating fiction of H.P. Lovecraft. Masters of the short story offer you a once-in-a-lifetime trick-or-treat experience. Perhaps your last. So, this one should just be a blast, especially if you're a Lovecraft fan, which I am. And finally, our last book on this list is one I just randomly stumbled upon a couple months ago, and it's another anthology. This one is called Literally Dead, Tales of Halloween Hauntings, edited by Gabby Triana. Once again, it features quite a few authors with whose work I'm already familiar, as well as some I've never read, so hopefully I should be able to discover something new and wonderful. The description of this one is pretty brief. It just says, Do you love All Hallows Eve? Ghost stories. Tales from beyond that leave you feeling unsettled while walking back to the kitchen at night. The orange and black vintage Halloween aesthetic. Haunted houses with shuttered windows. Edited by Gabby Triana with John Palisano, this anthology of 19 short stories by some of the most terrifying names in horror is the perfect collection for a dark and stormy October night. This particular October night, on which I'm filming, isn't particularly dark and stormy. But let's hope that some of the evenings in the near future will deliver the kind of weather that really helps us get into the Halloween spirit. I'm sure these books will also do their part, and I, for one, can't wait to dig into all of them. As I said at the beginning, I do encourage y'all to get copies of some or all of these books and read along with me. Let's turn the comments section on this video into a Halloween book club. Do try to keep it spoiler-free, or at least keep spoilers well labeled for people who haven't read the books yet. But other than that, share your thoughts. Now, it looks like I've got some reading to do, so I'm going to sign off. But as always, take care and stay scared.